Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azrin here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's YouTube video and podcast episode. On my blog, something I've been doing is I have been trying my best to tell the truth to myself and, of course, to people who happen to read the blog. In fact, telling the truth to myself has been a theme in my life for the past 3 or 4 months. This telling the truth is a very vulnerable practice and is a transformative practice. It's almost like a part of me burns up, dies, and another part of me is reborn. And I feel like this is a process that it's been happening quite rapidly. So I go through a personal transformation every 48 hours or 72 hours, something like that. And it's changed my personal life, my professional life. It's changed how I feel every day. It's also changed, interestingly, on my blog in particular, and also to an extent on my Instagram, but really on my blog. It's changed how people interact with my content. So I get all sorts of very fascinating emails back from people where they tell me very vulnerable stories about themselves. So they send me these very moving emails about how reading what I wrote was impactful for them or helpful to them. I realized today that I haven't actually taken this practice of telling the truth, being vulnerable. I haven't taken that, and I haven't really done it in a video format such as this. In a video, for example, obviously YouTube video, or even really an audio format such as on the podcast. I've only really done it in a written format. So I thought today I would take my camera out on my phone, take out my new fancy little microphone that I bought, and try to do this practice of telling the truth, being vulnerable on YouTube, and of course on my podcast as well. It's been helpful to people on the blog, and so I thought, let me give it a try on YouTube and see. Maybe there's some people on YouTube who watch this and they find it helpful as well. I don't know. So it's funny, I feel awkward doing it on a camera or podcast format because in writing I can be very concise. I have time to think about my words, pick the right words, and really articulate what's going through my mind. But in a video format, audio format, I have to fumble on my words a little bit. And so hopefully you'll stick with me. And maybe that's just a piece of making videos and podcasts. Maybe that's just a part of that process that's different than when you do something in writing. I don't know. So the first thing that comes to mind that's the most honest and perhaps vulnerable thing I can say as of right now is I wonder if I'm someone who wonders if I give myself a professional vision just for the mental comfort of having a professional vision. In other words, I give myself a plan I wonder if I give myself a plan to follow just because it gives me comfort to have a plan to follow. It's uncomfortable for me to think about that because I'm someone who's afraid of making not the wrong choices, but I'm someone who's afraid of following a pathway that is not the pathway that I should be following. Maybe there's a pathway that I could follow professionally, where I would be more successful, be more fulfilled, find much more meaningful, help more people even, right? And I wonder if I delude myself to following the career pathways that I follow because I don't know why. Maybe because I've not known anything different. Maybe because I was at a young age, I was impacted on a deeply emotional level by going to a seminar about being wealthy and being rich, getting rich quite quickly, and that affected me at a young age. I let go to an extent. I let go of the idea of becoming rich quickly within a few years of going to that seminar that I went to, because I did go to a seminar like that, where, an idea that I took away from the seminar was I can get rich quickly and I should try to get rich and I will get rich, and that's going to be very exciting for me. And that's going to be very positive for me. And I let go of the idea of getting rich quite quickly within a couple of years. But I wonder if, one thing, I don't know if this is true, but I do wonder if my interest in business is heavily impacted by going to that seminar at a young age and being impacted by it. And maybe at the end of the day, that perhaps that wasn't the right influence for me? I don't know. I think a lot about stories where someone at the age of 72, 68, 89, I've heard stories where they discover some talent at in the second half of their life that they didn't know that they had. And maybe they're a great singer or a great chef or a great baker, and they almost start. It's almost like they discover something that they were very good at, and it brings them an incredible amount of joy and possibly even amount of success, possibly financial success, potentially. But at least they're shocked that they were amazing at something, and they didn't know that they were amazing at it until they were 78 or 59 or 82. They didn't even know. They didn't know. And that makes me wonder, when I hear such a story, it sure makes me wonder, what if that person had discovered their innate interest, passion, and talent for cooking when they were 6 or 10? Maybe they would be another Gordon Ramsay. Or maybe they wouldn't be a Gordon Ramsay. Maybe they wouldn't even be famous. It's not necessarily, the fame is not necessarily what's important to focus on here. It could just be that they could have discovered something that would have been very meaningful, a very meaningful part of their life for their whole life, as opposed to something they discovered much later. And there's something very sad about that. And it makes me feel something like, it makes me feel like that person perhaps was on a pathway that wasn't the pathway they were supposed to be on. Maybe that's what this is, like, as I'm making this video here. Maybe that's how I feel. Maybe I feel like there's a pathway that everyone is supposed to be on. Something like that, almost like fate. Maybe there's a pathway we're all supposed to be on that would be the best pathway for us. It's the best pathway for each person. Has a single path that would be the best pathway for them. And I think a piece of me, it's funny, talking 7 minutes into this video and podcast, I've learned something that I didn't realize about myself. But I think that's right. I believe at some level that every single human has a specific life pathway, a combination of decisions that they could make throughout their life. That would be the ideal pathway for them. Now, ideal, who the heck knows what ideal means? I don't think ideal necessarily means the wealthiest pathway. I don't think ideal necessarily means the pathway that maximized short-term joy in a hedonistic sense. It might not. It might be. It might. Maybe it means, as I'm doing the scan throughout myself. I heard someone talk about doing a scan of their emotions and their feelings while they talk, and I thought to myself, that's a pretty interesting idea. So I'm doing that right now, and it's quite interesting. Maybe a piece of me does feel like the right pathway, at least maybe the right pathway for each individual, is the pathway that maximizes meaning and fulfillment. And that probably, I don't know if this is right, I have no idea, but maybe that means, maybe for me, what that means is a pathway that has the maximum amount of positive impact on other people. I don't know. That doesn't quite feel right either. I don't know what the criteria for the right pathway is, which is makes me feel a little bit anxious, to be honest with you, because I don't know what the right pathway is supposed to look like. But I think I do feel like every single person has a pathway that is the best pathway for them. And I just don't know what the criteria would be for something being the best pathway for someone. I don't know what the criteria is. And so that probably leads to someone honked their horn, an underlying amount of anxiety that runs through my mind, through my body. Yeah, I think it leads to an underlying amount of anxiety because I don't know what the criteria for this best pathway to follow is. And so it's almost like I'm trying to live my life in a way to figure out what the criteria for the right pathway forward is. For me lately, when I've been doing this practice in writing, it's the first time doing it in video and podcast live because when I write, the process of me writing and telling the truth and being vulnerable, the process is, there's no real planning. I sit down and I do this scan throughout my body and my mind, and I think, what needs to be said here? And then I start to write. And that's what I'm doing right now, except in video and audio format. It definitely feels unusual feels different than doing it in writing at any rate. But what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. But at any rate, oh yeah, I remember. So one thing I've realized as I've been doing this process of telling the truth and being honest to myself and even through to others, really, because people read what I write. By doing this, one thing I've realized is I'm learning a lot about the underlying beliefs I have in my head that dictate my life. And by becoming consciously aware of what those beliefs are, I can actually examine them, look at them in the light, and decide, is this actually something that is true? Is this serving me? Is this helpful? Is this really a belief I want to have living in my brain, in my head, in my mind? So now that I've realized that I, at some level, seem to believe that there is an ideal pathway for everyone to be following, number one, I got to examine if I really think that's true. And then number two, if I do decide, yeah, that probably is true, if I decide that, which I don't know, then the question becomes, what the heck is the criteria? What's the criteria of how do you figure out what is the best path for you? That's a good place to end off this video and podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I don't even know if people are going to find this interesting, helpful, useful. I have no clue, but I wanted to give it a try because people sure found it helpful on my blog. So have a great day, guys. Bye-bye. See you.